Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Rodigan, one of the Business Development Managers here at Defence Contracts International. Today in this webinar, we'll take a look at unlocking defence sector growth using the DCI tool and how suppliers can maximise return on investment. So what we'll cover off in the session, we'll start with a strategic overview of the UK defence market, the intelligence that sits behind our data, and we'll finish off by talking about how you can turn that intelligence to action. So in terms of the main talking points, we'll look at the market, we'll look at what our data is telling us and how that's reflected, and we'll look at the opportunities that are coming up in the next 12 months by way of tenders, frameworks, dynamic markets. I'll then share a success story of a supplier that's using our DCI service and has been for the last 10 years. And we'll finish off by how you can turn that intelligence into objective and actionable steps. So in terms of the current UK defence market, so we've already heard from our Defence Secretary, John Healey, that the UK will spend up to 3% of its GDP on defence in the next Parliament. And there are serious considerations about trying to accelerate this a year early to 2029. So what this means in practical terms, well, defence spending is expected to rise to £65 billion this year, and next year up from £54 billion this year. GDP is on track to hit 2.6% by 2027. This is ahead of previous projections as well. Our 3% GDP target is for the next Parliament, and as I've just mentioned, potentially expected to achieve this as early as 2029. And the 5% broader NATO target, and this represents the highest sustained increase in investment into defence since the Cold War. So key programmes and policy signals, so some of the opportunities that we'll see coming up into the near future. Of course, the announcements do show the breadth and ambition of the UK defence investment, spanning across allied support, advanced weapons development, SME access reform, and there's also been some landmark export wins as well. So some examples include the £500 million air defence package for Ukraine. This is including UK manufactured missiles and artillery rounds delivered under NATO initiatives that counter drone and missile threats. We also have seen the £400 million investment into hypersonic and precision weapons. This is a joint investment alongside some of our allies, France, Germany and Italy, largely to replace aging systems such as Storm Shadow and to bolster NATO deterrence as well. Our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, set out the strategic shift at the Munich Security Conference and what he described as a shift towards hard power and deeper EU defence ties. So quite essential for Europe to own its security response to the likes of Russian aggression. We've also seen the Defence Office for Small Business Growth get created, a dedicated unit designed around increasing the MOD spending with SMEs up to £7.5 billion by May of 2028, and to remove structural barriers. So in total, reflecting an additional £2.5 billion in SME contract value. And then in terms of the export win, comes from the £10 billion Type 26 frigate deal. This is the UK's largest ever warship export deal to Norway for them to receive the Type 26 frigates. This also strengthens NATO's northern flank and bolsters British shipbuilding. And finally, we have the example of the Ukraine-UK Defence Pact. So talks between Zelensky and Starmer to agree a new defence partnership that's aimed at tackling the cheap attack drones. So how this is being reflected in the data on DCI. So in our procurement summary for 2025, we revealed a market of significant scale and intensifying competition. So some of the numbers below reflect the intelligence that's been drawn from the site and highlight the procurement landscape in a bit more detail. It shows both the opportunities and the growing supplier field that are vying for these as well. So over the last year, just over 1,100 contract notices were published on the service. These have a combined value of almost £165 billion. In terms of the contract awards, you will typically see more awards published on the service than notices. These awards may also come from the likes of your framework opportunities. But in terms of that value, we're looking at £35 billion across the defence sector specifically. 51 different buyers have engaged with 1,066 different suppliers. So quite a concentrated buyer base, but also with broad supply chain reach. And currently, as things stand, it is almost 21 suppliers per buyer, quite significant because over the last year, we've seen this rise from just under 19 and a half. So competition definitely intensifying year on year as well. And more SMEs looking to get involved in public sector and get access to the opportunities that we anticipate are coming in the near future as well. So some of the industry sector highlights here. So growth is broad-based across all the major defence adjacent sectors. It's really important that you understand where the value is concentrated, and this will allow you to align yourself with your capabilities with the most active procurement pipelines. So in terms of the highlights, we have professional services with value up £100 billion in 2025. So the most significant sector uplift, driven largely by advisory, programme management, strategic support contracts. We also have infrastructure and construction. So the value here is up £105 billion. This is spread across 523 contracts and reflects investment in new bases, facilities, and also defence estate modernisation. Know, for example, speaking to many suppliers that are looking to get involved in the barrack upgrades that the MOD are doing to a lot of their facilities and estates as well. Moving on to energy and environment, we've seen contracts increase by almost 50% in 2025, largely driven by net zero initiatives and commitments and energy security priorities across the defence estate as well. And then in terms of the technology and communications, this sector is up by £25 billion across the last year, encompassing cyber, digital transformation initiatives and secure communications investments also. And the average size of a contract within the defence market currently sits at £210 million. So it underscores the scale at which the MOD is operating and the importance of positioning yourself as early as possible in the pipeline to take advantage. So looking at the opportunities coming up in the next 12 months, so DCI's database is identifying approximately 864 defence buyer contract awards that are potentially due to expire over the next year, and these represent a value of £2.18 billion. So these are not to be viewed as opportunities that are taken or missed out on. More often than not, many contracts within the public sector will go or come up for renewal in the future. They're cyclical. So how to engage ahead of those opportunities coming back to the market is to start speaking to the authorities now, understand what's going right with those contracts, maybe where the incumbent has fallen short, how likely is it that the authority will change from the incumbent and go back out to tender. And really what you're trying to do is affect how they'll rewrite these specifications. Quite often, once a tender gets published, rules of engagement will come into play and the authority will be limited on how much help they can provide to you. But if you're involved in their consultation period before the publication, you can bypass this and have open dialogue with them, make recommendations or support in the best way that they see fit. So across the next 12 months, in terms of those opportunities due to come up for renewal, these are the largest sectors here. We're looking at infrastructure and construction. Value here is just over £800 million. In terms of professional services, we're looking at just below the 500 million mark. Defence, slightly less, looking at just under 300 million. But the contracts tend to be more concentrated, so significantly important. And then across the general sectors as well, we're looking at just under £200 million here. And one of the largest areas of opportunities that we're seeing over the next 12 months comes through frameworks. For those of you on the webinar that maybe haven't got a great awareness of frameworks so far, they're essentially preferred suppliers lists that will run over the next number of years for a number of service offerings. A more efficient way for the authorities to run their own procurements or to award work directly to suppliers. So on the DCI service, we track all the position can provide access to multiple contract opportunities over several years. Of course, you'll see below the various sectors where frameworks are due to renew. What I'm actually going to do just now for the next 5 minutes is just to come out of the presentation and actually onto the DCI service here, so that we can take a look at how you can actually find the frameworks using the tool here. Now, DCI is also an intelligence tool, so there's many databases within this, each with their own designed slightly differently for various purposes. For those that are looking to find new opportunities, they can easily come into contract search. Typically, we search using keywords or phrases for the types of frameworks that you were interested in. Instead of doing that, I'm going to do just a general search so that suppliers on the webinar can see exactly the number of contracts that runs through this. So we'll search to find everything that's been published in the last year. Now, we're an international service, so the first thing that will pop up when you run a contract search is everything that we have published over the last year. Internationally, this works out, if I'm doing the maths correctly, at just under 5 million contracts over the last year. So if I wanted to see how many of those 5 million are reside within the UK, I can come into the filters in the bottom right-hand side. I can scroll down, select Framework Agreement, first of all, but I'll leave this off just now and select, apologies, just the UK market. So over the last year then in the UK, we have published just under 55,000 contract notices. We've also published far more awards, it looks like, just over 103,000 awards here. A lot of these will come directly from frameworks. But if I wanted to see, of the 55,000, how many of these contracts were framework agreements, can quickly filter down to framework, hit apply there. You can now see that over the last year, just over 7,000 new frameworks have been published. These are the frameworks below and their associated titles there as well. And if I wanted to see specifically how many of these fall within defence, again, I can move back into the filters. One thing that is superb about DCI is that it gives suppliers access to all industries across the public sector, not just defence. But of course, if I wanted to find the frameworks within defence, I can select that sector there, hit apply, find everything that's been published over the last year. If I wanted to see what's live just now that I can still get awarded onto, I can filter by deadline date there and scroll down and take a look at the frameworks that are still open just now or that are open over the next few years. So if I scroll back up to the top, we're looking at 725 guys in defence over the last year. And of course, we can do quite intuitive things on DCI. You will get all of the authorities within defence, but if I wanted to see how many of these relate directly to the MOD, I can punch them into the search box there, find the 59 opportunities that they publish below, and to scroll down and access those opportunities here. So everything, click of the button, saving suppliers, potentially hours that you can spend trying to find this information in the space of a few minutes. So the challenges that will still face suppliers in defence and indeed across the public sector as a whole. So despite government ambitions to increase SME participation, structural barriers do still remain. So understanding these challenges and how to overcome them is the first step towards success. So one of the biggest challenges is still complex procurement processes. So public sector procurement tends to be lengthier timelines, can be complex as well in nature, in terms of accreditations, understanding what is required and how to obtain these, and can also create challenges for suppliers. So understanding how to navigate them, what's required, and simplifying this process as soon as possible is key. What we can actually do on DCI as well is to show suppliers how good a fit the contract is for their service offerings. So we have embedded a tool on the system called Area Intelligence. So that will give suppliers personalised insights into a contract rather than spending hours over various meetings trying to qualify your own bid or no bid process. We can quickly give you a breakdown of the contract, how good a fit it is for your own business, and actionable next steps that you can take, suppliers or competitors to be mindful of. It's a lot of intelligence aimed at simplifying how complex these procurements can be. Lack of visibility is also another one that suppliers will face. There are hundreds of sites across the UK where tenders get published. So having a system that covers everything and that will alert you to new opportunities is absolutely key. I speak to suppliers daily that they can be spending hours. They might have alerts set up on 20 different sites. They're trying to track it manually and they're still missing out on opportunities or hearing about them at a late stage. So having a service such as DCI that will track everything in the background and alert you to relevant opportunities as and when they come up is key, rather than spending time, effort, and resources actually trying to find the opportunities. As a business, we would rather give you that back so that you can focus on a quality submission. And another major one is having no understanding of competition. So still we find that a lot of suppliers will choose to tender quite reactively. They maybe don't have a relationship with the authority that's been pre-established, or indeed know the right people to speak to. So quite often suppliers will say to us, I'm interested in this tender, however it feels as if it's maybe been written for one of our competitors. The chances are that might be the case, that you may be coming up against a competitor that's spoken to that authority in the months leading up to the publication. They've actually had a hand in how the specifications for the tender have been written, and they've positioned themselves right where they need to be in order to win that contract. So the way to overcome this is to understand who the incumbents are on these contracts. So who holds them currently, when do they come to an end in future, and who do you need to speak to actually unseat that incumbent, affect the relationship, and to have the specifications redrawn, all of which we can help suppliers with on DCI. So another one there is just understanding, like I say, who the incumbents are, the strength of that relationship, how long the incumbent has been working with the buyer. Often it can be a number of years, and therefore the buyer, the authority, is unlikely to actually change. But you could still spend a lot of time and effort, going for that tender without realizing you didn't really have a great chance of actually winning it in the first place. So all of these challenges still remain, all of which DCI looks to solve. Now I'll move on to a success story. So one of our customers, the Henry Brothers, has been using DCI for 10 plus years now. What started off as a way to really just monitor the types of contracts they were interested in that were coming out has evolved into a key function right across their business development team. So the challenge that they had at the time was visibility, credibility as well, and coverage across a complex multi-region public sector pipeline. So how the DCI system actually helped them, market intelligence and competitor insight. So understanding who Henry Brothers were competing against in the market was absolutely key. The quite a saturated industry they're in terms of construction, so a lot of competitors that were interested in the types of contracts that they were competing for. Sales pipeline management as well, because of the number of opportunities that are coming up for renewal over the next 12 months. Henry Brothers needed a way to manage what that pipeline looked like, busier periods where they needed to allocate resource towards completing the tender submissions. So having that laid out in a very simplistic style where you could see exactly what was coming up over the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, so that you can allocate that resource accordingly was crucial. And never missing an opportunity. So one of the big USPs with BIP solutions is that once we set up robust profiles for your organizations, we capture all the tenders that come out. We have AI and machine learning that works in the background. So if, for example, we have maybe a tender that comes out and the keywords in your profile haven't exactly picked it up, the AI in the background will still display this for suppliers so that, like I say, don't miss anything relevant that comes out. So the results that Henry Brothers have achieved over the last 10 years, really significant as well. Sharper, faster pursuit decisions. Their teams don't need to spend hours qualifying whether a tender is a good fit for the business, whether they have a likelihood of actually winning it. The intelligence provides that, provides support in that decision within minutes. This leads to stronger positioning ahead of procurement. So they understand the right people to reach out to. On DCI, we have a database of stakeholder contacts right across the public sector as well. So understanding who the right people are within procurement at housing associations or local authorities, even NHS trusts, or indeed the broader central government portfolio, such as your defence organisations, They know who they need to speak to, they know when they need to speak to them, and they go out and build those relationships ahead of the renewals and position themselves in the best possible way. So intelligence-led business development is now a standard practice at the Henry Brothers. They use what they find on DCI to support them with their own bids. They make informed decisions, and it's strategy-led, and they now have complete market coverage as well. So at the time that they came to us, monitoring a few different portals, missing a lot of opportunities, finding out about tenders where they might have only had 2 or 3 days to actually respond, a lot falling through the cracks. It was potentially a good fit. Now they don't need to worry about that. They're alerted to new opportunities as and when they come out, and they can respond to the ones that are a good fit and use the intelligence to position themselves well on these contracts. So we have a nice quote from Rodney Hassan, who's the bid director, and he says that DCI produces value for money and adds value to how we operate as a business. There's no doubt about that. So there's hundreds of success stories very similar to this, guys, and thousands of suppliers that are using these service internationally. So we encourage anybody that is wondering what this can potentially do for their business to reach out, and of course we'll arrange a demonstration to show you. But turn that intelligence into advantage. In terms of the public sector, we are seeing more and more opportunity and more suppliers that are competing for this. So it's never been more important to look at ways that you can gain a competitive advantage. And how we do that is through early engagement with the authorities. Of course, they might choose to publish a UK1 or a UK2 where a tender hasn't come out yet. But why not speak to them anyway? Why not find the right people to engage with just now, and go out and have that dialogue about opportunities coming up for renewal in future, what they're awarding directly, what their supply chain currently looks like. Public sector can be a hard work, but one thing that we're learning from the events that we're running, such as DPRTE, is that the authorities like the MOD need educated by suppliers. They need to hear from suppliers and where they differ from who they're using just now in terms of price, quality, service. So go away and do that with them, work out where you can create a route to market and DCI and speak to the right people. So engage earlier, use the intelligence that you find on the system, and align your business with the priorities and policies that these authorities are looking for. So that brings us to the end of today's session. I hope that's given the suppliers that are on the call a better understanding of how to approach the defence market or public sector in general. Like I say, we'd encourage anyone that is looking to find new contracts or frameworks, or indeed to find more competitive ways of winning tenders, to reach out. A demonstration for this lasts usually no more than 30 minutes, so it will not cost you a lot of your day. But thank you everyone that has been on the call, and I look forward to speaking to you all about how DCI can support your business.